Alright, ignorant family, finally the Oberon Clutch Slave fitment happening here. So I'm trying to get some sun in here so that we can see what we're doing here with the Clutch Slave. Before I start any of that off, I just want to say to anybody that actually does YouTube as either like a solid hobby or to make money, dealing with the cameras and dealing with wind, air, setting it up and putting it on places, like, it's such a pain in the ass, honestly. So the folks that are out there doing this and kind of do quality videos, I commend you guys, but here's my crappy video instead. Alright, I've already gone to the trouble of, it's just 2 bolts to remove the case cover, sorry, for the front sprocket to give me a little bit more access here. I've cleaned up some of the gunk because the RC8 basically on the original chain that they put in, it's got this like thick grease lapping compound. It's probably amazing for the bike and everything else, but it's crap when it comes to just, it gets everywhere. These are Torx, the same Torx for those. For me, it's a T30 Torx. And as always, this is done pretty much in one take, and if I screw up, well, you guys see it, and I'm going to do my best. I am wearing gloves because there's just a little bit more grease and oil and everything else that kind of goes through with this. And because I might have to touch my camera to stop it, or if it falls over like it's done before, just to get that sorted out. Alright, so before starting, sorry for the angle. Nope. There we go. So before starting, I've checked the bolts. The bolts that are provided by Oberon are actually 2 are longer, 2 are shorter. I don't know what's short and what's long for these, so we're gonna have to figure it out. I think maybe because I'm using the backing plate, I bought the extra backing plate. I'm gonna assume that the longer bolts are needed for the extra for the new backing plate. And then one of the last things that you have to do is, when this thing comes out here, they give you a little steel ball bearing. I gotta try my best not to drop that so I can show it to the camera. Steel ball bearing, and that's got to go in there. So when this comes out, it's pre-greased pretty decently. Ball bearing actually, and there's a little, where is it? Alright, maybe there's not. So that goes in there. And then I've just got basically a small screwdriver just to seat it. And then, I don't know if that'll work for the camera, but it's all the way down in there. So I'm just going to get rid of just some of the grease. The interior grease I'm leaving, and that's it. So that's basically, it's prepped. I'm just going to check the camera to see whether or not this has got a good angle. Not horrible, not great. Alright. I've just added some rags here and here. It's going to drop a little bit of the hydraulic fluid or the mineral oil. I'm using Magura, the stuff that's the KTM crap. So that's actually fairly loose. And that was actually fairly loose. Okay then. I wonder if my shit was just loose. So it's 1 bolt out. If I compare this to the replacement, so these appear to be long bolts. Oh, this bolt here that you're gonna have to remove before you put the copper washers in is a 13 mil. And I don't know what it says. I think it says 14 in the Oberon thing. Interesting. Okay, so there's the backing plate. There's some greenish, yellowish, whatever shit in there. This actually came off very easily. I'm almost wondering if this isn't messed. And I'm almost wondering if it was just loose or it backed off or something, because this bike vibrates like a bastard. So there's the stock one, and there's the Oberon. I don't know if I'm saying Oberon right or wrong, but that's life. I'm also going to assume that I have to reuse those little sleeves. So I'm going to see whether or not they punch out easily. They do, very easily. So that's one out. So all I'm really doing is I'm just holding this here. I'm sure if I use like a step down Allen key or something like that, I'm just kind of pushing on the corner. And it just popped out pretty easy. So there's a recess there. I don't know if this is even showing up or not, but there's a recess there. That's going in there. Mother. And I dropped it. So I'm going to clean this piece up before I end up putting it in there with dirt, and then I don't get my gap. Good to go, all clean, and that is going to go there, and it just fell right in without any issue. Alright. Next thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take one of my rags. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. It's a little bit of a fucking mess. Alright, I'm happy with that. Now they say that you should pre-fill this, not pre-fill it, you should add the fluid in, and then by adding the fluid in, you basically make the bleeding process a little bit easier. So that sits like that. I'll use the replacement bolt. Some finicky shit right here. So now, one thing I didn't check is this is actually now a hex instead of a Torx. The replacement bolts here. It's the same size, T30. So I'm just putting it in loose anyways. I'm not going to use this to actually tighten it down. There's also no torque specs for this. Back that off a little bit. Okay, so the way that they kind of showed, or the way that it's been explained to me that I understand, sorry, not shown, is you leave a little bit of a gap in between the bolts so that this has got some play to it. Yay! You fill that, that's basically to the top, and then you push it in and out a little bit, and that starts. The camera angle is no good, but there's bubbles and the fluid is lowering, so it's doing what it's got to do here. And then back these out just a little bit more to give myself a little bit more play. So every time I do that, a little bubble pops up, and that's again full fill to the top. And by doing this, I'm basically filling the reservoir of the clutch slave, and this is going to help my bleeding time out, or hopefully it should help my bleeding time out quite a lot. So this is going to be the third fill, so this little Oberon Clutch Slave actually holds quite a lot of fluid by the looks of it. Okay, that looks to be about it. I pushed out on that one. I'm not really getting any more of a bubble. I'm going to go and grab some hex. My apologies, like I said a little bit earlier. Big shout out to basically anybody that does this for a living, that makes this look easy. So I went and I grabbed a hex. This is a number 5 hex that fits this no problem here. These gloves are making things a little bit slippery for me. I usually don't use gloves whenever I'm doing any type of mechanics. I honestly don't care. I get a better feel out of my hands when I do these things, and it just feels a little bit more textile. I guess you could say I like barebacking it. That was a weird joke. And this is also me doing everything in one take, so you're getting all of the stupid crap that I'm going to say. So I basically just put that clutch slave back into the box where that sits, so that and it's sitting upright so that the fluid isn't leaking out, to give myself a little bit of space. So the original clutch slave now, these gloves are absolutely messed up. I'm just putting back on because in order for me to break that torque a little bit easier, I'm going to want to have that cinched down. Unless I can do that without. Actually, I could probably do it without. Are you kidding me? This is going to be my best video yet with stupid shit. Alright, so like I said, this is a 13. It's a deep 13 that I put onto this. Nope, I am going to have to put it on there. See, this is where editing would probably be a good thing, instead of this one take shit that I do. Shout out again to anybody out there that has an editing program that's free. I'm not getting paid to do any of this. I'm just trying to try and help our community out. The RC8 community is a pretty small community, and if we can do a few things and get rid of a few problems that we might be experiencing with our bikes by not taking it to a mechanic every time, doing some of your own mechanics, then basically it really helps out in the pocketbooks, and might make things a little bit easier for us. Not necessarily easier, but at least help us out a little bit. Alright, back to Lucy, folks. was easy. So I kind of want to be a little bit fast with this, so I'm going to move a little bit faster because that fluid is going to seep. I'm doing my best to try and not get any air in the system. I realize this is now turning into a long video and I'm talking too much. Two new copper crush washers that you need to put, one bottom, one top, when you change the system over. Get rid of those two, put those aside. Looks fine, doesn't look like it's broken. Clean it off. The inside of that banjo line also looks fine, doesn't look like it's got that much happening. So that's all clean, good to go. Some boys brapsing. Some boys are out there brapsing without me. So there's the new washer, and secondary washer on the bottom. This now goes into the Oberon. Just going to do it loosely, basically just to get it cinched up. That's hand tight. And that is back in. There we go. Now that I'm using these gloves, and the gloves have a little bit of the Magura oil on it, Magura oil, they're a little bit slippery, so I'm a little bit slower. Okay, so that is on. There is no torque spec for this, not that I found. Whenever there's no torque spec, I basically go till it's cinched down, and then I go about an 1/8 turn past tight. That's it. I've already gone too tight on this bottom one because I can see that I've scored the aluminum. Alright, and lastly, this gets tightened down. So because these are copper crush washers here, there's going to be quite a lot of play in it to start with. So again, whenever there's no torque specs or anything else like that, I basically go about an 1/8 tighter than hand tight. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera off because I'm going to start bleeding. Okay, alright, back to the bleeding. So everything has been cinched down. Again, there's no torque specs that I found on either of the bolts here or for the crush washers. I just make sure that everything's been wiped down and as dry as possible. You can see I've lost the gloves. Bareback is where it's at. Anyways, as per Oberon, they suggest 5 pulls on the clutch handle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They suggest holding in the clutch handle and then releasing any pressure. As you can see, that was explosive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is basically bleeding the air out of the system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Woo! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. I think I'm going to maybe put a rag up here. I'm starting to get quite a lot of explosions happening here. My clutch handle is now starting to get stiff a little bit, so that was 15 pulls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's really starting to not feel spongy. It was basically like, it basically felt like there was nothing there. Like it just, I was pulling it in and there was absolutely no resistance. Resistance was the word I was looking for. And now that I'm pulling it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm starting to get resistance. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting out loud. I don't know why, but I'm figuring this might help people somehow. Okay, so now I'm starting to leak out. I haven't seen any air bubbles. I'm getting the resistance that I like into that clutch handle, but not enough. The main thing that you have to watch also is my reservoir is up here. I've got it shrouded. It's full of fluid. It's really sinking low. You have to make sure that that doesn't empty, because then you're going to end up sucking air into the system, which is basically what we're trying to get rid of. Get rid of the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do this a little bit slower. There you go. So I can see little air bubbles and stuff, just tiny little air bubbles still coming out. I'm going to continue to bleed a little bit more until I get that feel out of this that I really want. I'm going to add some more fluid to my clutch reservoir up top there, because I basically filled it to max and it's at the minimum right now. So I've just added the fluid back in and I'm going to continue to bleed. Alright, so I've made a conscious choice now that I'm going to do one more fluid reservoir of it, basically to the minimum, refill it, and then I'm going to stop my bleeding, because I'm not seeing that many more air bubbles coming out of this, so I'll pause the video for that. Alright, fellow Iggy Custom Garage peeps, so here's the original Clutch Slave. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera, but there in the corners, it actually looks like it's eroded, or it's I'm not sure really. Even there it looks almost, not that it's coming apart, but maybe that's where my issue might be. I was getting some seepage. I'm not really sure. I don't know. So in another video I might end up taking this apart and see maybe why this failed on me, or why I think it failed on me. The clutch itself right now feels really good. I've done my bleeding. I did about, well, like I said, I did 2 cylinders worth of the fluid, not letting it get low enough that the air was going to kick into it or anything else like that. I'm very comfortable with the bleeding. I've replaced the cap, so with any luck, all I've got to do is put my shroud back on here, just to kind of that protective case. With any luck, this is going to take care of the issue that I was having with the clutch feeling like a brick. As always, I keep all of my parts. I'm not going to keep the original copper washers or anything else like that, but I keep all of my original parts, and I keep all of the original bolts. Should I ever need to put things back to stock for any reason, or if I've got to maybe take a look at it in a different way, just to see what may or may not have happened. So that's it. Alright, ignorant family. So it turns out that it was my clutch slave. Here's the Oberon. It's on there. It looks good. Everything's tightened down. The beast is back. I ran it through all 6 gears. Did a quick boot just around the block, quote unquote, to get through the entire 6 gears. So it turns out, yeah, that was the issue. I'm going to be putting this round back on afterwards, the guard. But I'm just going to have it sitting here for a while just to make sure that everything's tightened down good enough and that there's no leaks. It's actually quite hot. And to make sure that there's no leaks, I'm going to be basically watching the ground to see if there's any fresh leaks here. About 2 years ago, I actually noticed over here on my friggin' by my shifter, I had some issues, and I was like, well, what is this? Like, how come there's oil here? And I was trying to source it, trying to figure it out, and I couldn't figure it out. I've got a Rottweiler system on this, SAS deletes, tune, got a whole bunch of work done to this. And when you use the Rottweiler intake, which sits right up here, it's known that it vents into this, and then it kind of goes top down, and then it looks here like it's all leaking from the motor. And then I thought, well, maybe it's all just kind of figured its way out all the way here to the lowest part, and that's what it was, because I wasn't having any issues whatsoever with my bike. And I wasn't thinking clutch slave at the time. Now that I've realized that it was, obviously the clutch slave was leaking, and then the air must have hit it and then kind of blew it on over here, which is why I was like, well, how is it that my sets, like, is my shifter leaking? Like, there's no oil there. How does that make any sense? So that was 2 years ago. So now it finally makes sense that it was the Oberon. So I've got 2 photos of that actually from 2 years ago. I'm going to see if I can upload those as stills. So if somebody's having the same type of issues as me, or you notice some oil and you don't know where it's coming from, maybe it'll help you out. That's it for now.